This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 244. Is Twitter dead? Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you grow your tribe and your bottom line through insanely good content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is September 14th, 2017. Hello, or as we say in Texas, howdy, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, this podcast is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, I almost said iCloud, no, that's not it, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music. So if you like what you hear, feel free to click on over and subscribe. I also invite you to download our complimentary audio and ebook, B2B Content Marketing, from the blog to the bottom line. Download today and learn how to drive engagement at each stage of the B2B buyer's journey. To snag your free copy, go to contentmarketinggift.com. Last week, we talked about relationship marketing and how content can help us rekindle the romance with our current customers. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to check it out on iTunes or via the RSS feed. Today, we're talking Twitter, specifically whether Twitter is even worth our time and effort in this day and age. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Last month, Facebook announced that it was testing Facebook Stories on the desktop interface. So previously, Facebook Stories had only been available through the app, through the mobile app, but they were testing it on the desktop interface. And apparently the test went well because Facebook is continuing to expand a new desktop user interface that prominently features Facebook Stories at the top right-hand corner of the site. Now, I just noticed this a couple of days ago that all of a sudden at the top right of my Facebook page, there are these stories. And in that top right section, I see one story. There's one lonely little story from Mari Smith, and that's it. Which makes me question, as I've been questioning for a while, whether Facebook Stories is even viable. You know, Snapchat started this whole thing, and then Instagram did it better and jumped on that bandwagon. And I think that it's just saturated, that there's no room for a Facebook Stories, and Facebook is trying to play catch up, and I just don't see that catching on. Speaking of which, that brings us to news item number 2. Instagram, which is of course owned by Facebook, is testing the ability to cross-post stories to Facebook. So one story, one photo, one video, whatever it is, will be, if they go forward with this, will be cross-posted to Facebook Stories and Instagram Stories. Instagram, like I said, is testing the option to share photos and videos created with Instagram's in-app camera to Facebook Stories and Instagram Stories simultaneously. This is why it's good to be Facebook, right? Because they, of course, own Instagram, and they say, okay, well, something's working on Instagram, and the same approach isn't working on Facebook. Well, then let's just get these two kids together, and this will expand the footprint of your stories as well, and it might get a little more engagement. And that's always been the challenge with this real-time interaction that we see with Snapchat and with the whole stories function. It's that you can only post one moment to one platform at a time. And I'm consistently amazed. One of the people I follow, one of the only reasons I go to Snapchat anymore, to be honest, is to follow Kevin Hart. And if you don't know Kevin Hart, start following him. He's a comedian. He's brilliant. Love him. But he actually does both Snapchat and Instagram. So he will record a moment, he'll share a moment on Snapchat and then go right over to Instagram and redo what he just did. It's really labor intensive, and I don't know many people who do it. And I certainly don't know anybody who is doing Instagram stories and then flipping over and doing Facebook stories. So this approach just might work. And as people see stories popping up in their Facebook feed, they might be more likely to click on them and engage with them. We will have to see. Okay, our content hit of the week is a great post by Neil Patel, always a good source for good information. It's called Google Hates Link Building. Here's how to do it the right way. Now, if we're going to drive traffic to our content, then, excuse me, Link building has got to be part of our overall content strategy. As we know, Google has put the kibosh on the old spammy practices of link building. So like, buying links from these link farms, that is all gone away. Google got wise to it, shut it down. So how do we build links to our content? How do we do it correctly in a way that works and that does not anger the Google gods? So in this post, Neil breaks down the types of backlinks that Google likes and also looks at a few different strategies to get high quality backlinks for your website. It's an excellent read, as we come to expect from Mr. Patel, and I will of course provide the link in the blog post for this episode. That is it for this week's newsfeed. If you stumble across something you think would be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please tweet it to me at @RachParker so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment. Is Twitter dead? If your brand is active on Twitter and you've been watching your analytics, you are watching your analytics, aren't you? Good. I thought so. You may have noticed those analytics, how shall I say, sucking over the last maybe year or so, or maybe even longer. And if you look at Twitter as a whole, we're seeing a lot of trouble there as well. There's been basically no innovation since they purchased Periscope. Gosh, what is it now? Like 2-3 years ago? I know they've lost a lot of ground to Instagram. They've even lost a lot of ground to Snapchat in getting in on that real-time content sharing space. And there's at the higher levels of Twitter, there's just not a whole lot going on. So a combination of those two factors, that's why I was intrigued to find a post by Jay Baer called, "Is Twitter in 2017 Even Worth the Trouble?" Now, if you want to check it out, I will, of course, give the URL in the show notes for this episode. But I was intrigued by the title. And then the first line is, would it just be easier to quit Twitter? And just kind of leaving the question out there. And he cites some new research from Jay's partners at a outfit called Rival IQ. They found that the average engagement rate on Twitter for brands is now 0.049%. Now that's engagement, likes, comments, tweets, all that stuff. 0.049%. Just to put that in perspective, a tweet to 10,000 followers. Now, I would love to have 10,000 followers. I've crawled my way up to like 6,000. But if you have 10,000 followers, a tweet will generate on average 4.9 engagement behaviors, and then again, that's likes, comments, retweets. So also think about this. The average click-through rate on banner ads is about 0.05%. So yes, Twitter's engagement rate is now slightly lower than the average banner ad click-through rate. I know I'm seeing that on my own brand Twitter account. And recently I was talking with a fairly new client. This is an attorney. And he's doing great on Facebook. He's doing great on Instagram. But in Twitter, he only has about 60 followers. Now, as I said, I just started working with him. But he was saying, okay, how can we get that number up? And I said, I don't even know if it's worth it. I don't know if it's worth. I said, yeah, we can spend some money and create some campaigns to do some promoted tweets and some campaigns to get you more followers. But I just don't know if it's worth it anymore, especially starting from such a low baseline. And so that really got me to thinking about how Twitter, where do we put Twitter in this day and age? Is it is it time to toss it on the ash heap along with all the other defunct networks? Is it time to say, okay, Twitter's had its day in the sun and it's time to toss it? Or is it still viable? And the conclusion that I've come to is the old way of looking at Twitter, the idea of pushing content out there and just hoping it goes viral and gets shared 50,000 times and it makes you a Twitter superstar. I think that approach is just not working anymore. The Twitter universe is too big. It's too crowded. There are too many people sharing content, sharing similar content. So the idea that, I'm going to tweet out this blog post and my goal is to get 10 retweets, that's probably not going to happen. Now, does it mean we shouldn't be sharing content on Twitter? Not necessarily. I think there is something to be said for for keeping up with sharing our content on Twitter because, people do go to our Twitter pages and want to see what we're doing, what we're focusing on, and people will see those blog posts. I've had blog posts retweeted that were published 6 months ago, and people suddenly discovered them, and one person retweeted, and somebody in their network liked it, and then before I know it, I was getting fresh traffic to this blog post that went out 6 months ago. So I do believe Twitter is still viable, but that it's changing. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So right now I want to focus on 3 areas where Twitter still shines, where Twitter is the king, where Facebook can't touch it, Instagram can't touch it, Snapchat, stories, whatever, that where Twitter is still king. And the first area is live events. Twitter is still the king when it comes to live events. For example, last week we had Content Marketing World going on in Cleveland, and the way that I kept up with the conference was through Twitter. People sharing snippets of presentations, people sharing photos, people sharing, they had one of these artists on the scene who does, and you've probably seen this before, they do live infographics. Like as the speaker is speaking, they are actually creating infographic. The person has a whiteboard on an easel. They're actually creating infographics. It's absolutely fascinating. And a lot of those were being shared. And it was a level of activity and engagement and interaction that I was not seeing with the conference on Facebook, and it's not what I was seeing from the conference on Instagram. But Twitter, yeah, absolutely. Those tweets were flying fast and furious. They were getting liked, they were getting retweeted, and people like me who were supposed to be at the conference but couldn't be there, there was a great way for us to keep up with it. And I made some interesting new Twitter contacts and got into some interesting conversations with people. So for live events, and the big picture, Twitter consistently outperforms Facebook and Instagram with live events like the Academy Awards, like the Super Bowl, really any sporting event. When I'm watching the Texans, whatever the outcome is. Lately, the outcome has been bad. Twitter's where I follow that conversation. Those real live, those live commenting, and then of course big news events like Hurricane Harvey. That was where a lot of people kept up with which shelters were open, which supplies were being made available, which areas were being evacuated, where they were doing boat rescues. So the takeaway that I offer you here is to make Twitter part of your strategy for live events. So for webinars, for conferences, if one of your subject matter experts is doing a Facebook Live event or another live video feed where they're answering questions in real time, that's an excellent opportunity to use Twitter in this area where it still shines. And if you're at a conference, say you have a booth at an expo, don't just keep tweeting out, oh, come to our booth and enter our drawing, come to our booth and blah, blah, blah. Really use it as a news channel to report on what's going on. Think about yourself as a, boots on the ground reporter and sharing information from this conference. And think about creative ways to do that. I was at a conference last year where one of the vendors, they repeatedly tweeted photos of the shoes of people who came to their booth. And there were, on the women's side, there were high heels, there were flats, there was every color of the rainbow. It was February, so there were different boots. And then for the guys, some of them had cowboy boots, some of them had really spiffy wingtips, and they kept sharing these photos of people's shoes. And it was really fun. It was fun to follow that feed. What did it have to do with their brand? Nothing. What did it have to do with engaging people at the conference? A whole freaking lot. And I would be willing to bet that people who were not at the conference enjoyed it as well. So as far as live events go, think about what your company does that is live and real time and in person. Are you doing webinars? Are you doing Facebook Live events? Are you presenting at conferences? And then how can you use Twitter as your personal newsfeed to share what's going on with your fellow attendees? Now, a word of warning, as I mentioned, Twitter was great during Hurricane Harvey. People were finding out about services they needed and evacuations and stuff like that. Jump on those at your own risk. Okay, whenever we're talking about dangerous situations or possible heaven forbid, loss of life or damage to property, be very careful how you engage. Never forget the Kolhan tweet during the Cairo uprising that they said, oh, they must have found out about our new collection. And that tweet has I don't know if it killed their reputation, but they suffered some serious damage as a result of this tweet. So if you are tweeting about anything like, serious issues like hurricanes or stuff, be respectful. And if you, when in doubt, just don't. Run it by people if you want to, but when in doubt, just don't. On the plus side, in Hurricane Harvey, one of our local businesses, Gallery Furniture, the guy Mattress Mac who owns it, everybody knows Mattress Mac because of his cheesy commercials, but he opened up all 3 of his stores as shelters. Said, hey, come on, we've got furniture store, right? They've got beds, they've got recliners, and he just opened it up. So yeah, if you are helping out with the effort, or if you have news to provide a service to your community, absolutely use Twitter to be of service during events like that. But do not, don't abuse it as Kolhan did in that Cairo uprising. Had to get that PSA in there because there have been some really embarrassing moments on Twitter in trying to jump in on natural disasters and other mega serious issues. The second area where Twitter shines is with one-on-one personal connections. Now, I have 2 Twitter accounts. I have one for my brand, Resonance, C-O-N-T, Resonance Content with the E-N-T lopped off. And then I have my personal Twitter account, Rach Parker. Now, on the personal account, yes, I share business stuff. I share a blog post. I share my daily tips. But I also share goofy videos of my dogs. I was thrilled to share that South Park is starting a new season this week. Yay, South Park! Love my boys. But it's also, goofy stuff. If we're grilling something really good, I'll tweet a photo of that. Or if we're making some really good salsa, you'll see that on my Twitter feed. So it's personal, and I've made some really good connections on Twitter. Just sharing that. Sharing the business side, but also sharing bits and pieces of my life. If I ever speak, then you'll see me do a lot of tweeting from that event. Again, tapping into the live real-time event thing. And I've made some really good contacts. So what can you take away from that? I would say you have 2 takeaways from this strength of Twitter for forming personal connections. And again, it's not about going viral. It's not about that one tweet getting shared 286 times or retweeted 286 times and just becoming a sensation. But it's about those intimate one-to-one personal connections. The first takeaway I'd share with you is in your brand on Twitter, be more personal. Take off that capital B brand mask and just share stuff. Share stuff that's going on. Maersk did a great job with people sharing photos from wherever they are all over the world. They're shipping companies. So they're sharing beautiful photos of a sunset in Buenos Aires or beautiful photos of the ice-capped mountains in the North Sea. Are there mountains in the North Sea? I don't know. Maybe that's an error. Sorry. If so, I apologize. But think about ways you can be more personal and step away from, okay, what is our brand message and how are we growing our footprint, and just share personal stuff. One of my clients years ago was an oil and gas company, and when one of their colleagues was out on vacation, while he was out, they did the old office prank of wrapping everything on his desk in aluminum foil. And we shared that. We shared that stuff on Twitter. Why? Because it's fun, it's engaging, it's highly personal, and it makes people say, oh, wow, this is not just a brand trying to get business through Twitter. These are real people. They're fun, they're human, and I think I'm going to keep up with them. See about ways to be more personal through your brand. The second takeaway I would offer you from this is to get more of your people on Twitter. Get your subject matter experts out there. Get your executives on Twitter if they are comfortable using the platform. Now, if they're not comfortable or if they don't want to do it, don't force it. Probably worst case scenario would be, getting one of your engineers on Twitter who doesn't want to be there, who doesn't know how it works, who's sharing stuff left and right, and just, it's just not good. So if they're comfortable, encourage them to be on Twitter, to share what they're doing. Are they presenting at conferences? Are they attending industry events? And to share what's going on with them, or are they doing live Q&As, or do they want to do a Q&A on Twitter? Maybe many subject matter experts will do live Twitter chats from, let's say, Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Central Time, where people just ask them questions. One thing that I noticed is during the hurricane, of course, I was following a lot of news channels, and what news channels have started doing is assigning each reporter a Twitter ID that's also connected to the network. So one of our TV stations is KPRC2. So they have KPRC2 Sophia, KPRC2 Kelly, and these are the different reporters that tweet for that is their network Twitter feed. So they might tweet a combination of personal stuff and news items, and if that might work for your organization, think about it. Give it a try. It's thinking about assigning those Twitter IDs would be a person's business account, if you will, where they share, okay, here's what's going on in the mailroom today, or here's how our company's volunteering at a soup kitchen, or whatever they want to share. So if that might work for your organization, hey, give it a try. See what happens. Because I will tell you, when people see a logo as a profile picture, it's almost like they're instantly on their guard. Okay, what is this? This is clearly a brand. What are they trying to sell me? And we can diffuse that by those two tactics that I talked about, by being more personal in our brand and by letting our people tell our story. The third area where Twitter really shines is customer service. Twitter is still pretty much the top network for customer service. Now, yes, Facebook is trying to get in on that. They've got new features like have to do with page messaging, but primarily people will take to Twitter if something is wrong, like if something is wrong on your website, if they're getting error messages, if they haven't, say they open a ticket with your customer service team and they haven't had a call back, people will take to Twitter. And if you respond promptly and appropriately, it's a major win for your brand. So the takeaway here is monitor your Twitter feed for customer service issues and be ready to engage as quickly as possible. People are looking for instant reaction. Or response, at least. And then even if your response is, we know about the problem and we're working on it, or thanks for letting us know, we'll get right on this, keep up with our Twitter feed for updates, at least respond to them. And also, if you're a large company with a big customer service department, like if you're in the IT field or anything that involves very intense customer service activity, you might want to do what Comcast did and create a separate Twitter feed. You might want to ABC company help or support or something like that. Because people will turn to Twitter for customer service issues. And like I said, if you respond promptly and appropriately, then that is a huge win. And that is much more likely they're going to be a customer for a long, long time and maybe even share their experience with their friends. So to get back to our original question, is Twitter dead? I would say it is not dead, but it's changing. Is it dead as a bullhorn for pushing out content? Yeah, probably. But for live events, for personal engagement, and for customer service, I'm here to tell you Twitter is very much alive. And as savvy content marketers, as I know everyone listening to this podcast is, it's up to us to leverage Twitter where it performs best and where it really shines. So that is my take on the question of Twitter's future. If you want to add to the conversation, feel free to tweet me. Yes, I am on Twitter too, at Rach Parker. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to share one of my favorite Twitter tools, and that is Click to Tweet. And you can find them at clicktotweet.com. And that's two spelled out, not the numeral two. So CLICKTOTWEET.com. If you've ever read a blog post and seen the tweet this link and you click on it and it actually, it's a pre-populated tweet with that snippet from that blog post and some other information. That's what we're talking about here. And what I love about Click to Tweet is it lets people instantly share specific gems of wisdom from your content. So they're not just saying, oh, I found this good article on whether the duplicate content penalty is fact or fiction. They're actually sharing a specific gem of wisdom. So it's like the difference between going to a conference saying, "Oh, great presentation by Jay Baer." The difference between that and actually sharing one of the slides from his presentation. It's much more specific. It's a much more of a takeaway rather than a general promotion. So, highly recommend it. It is free. It's a freemium service at click2tweet.com, and you input your tweet, and then it assigns you a URL. So when you are writing your post and you put in those words "click to tweet," that's how you hyperlink it. And it's great. It works really well. I just reminded myself to use it more often because it does. It lets people share specific insights, and this will be much more likely to help grow your brand. So if you have not yet discovered it, head over to click2tweet.com and start using it for your content. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play Music or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. Also, if you want to learn more about content marketing, you will definitely want to grab a copy of my book, The Content Marketing Coach, Everything You Need to Get in the Game and Win. That is available in book and Kindle format. To learn more about the book and to download a free chapter, visit contentmarketingcoachbook.com. As you know, I always like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from Steve Jobs. He once said, quote, "If you really look closely, most overnight successes took a long time," unquote. And if that is not true of content marketing and social media, I do not know what is. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.